أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. وأعوذ به من شر نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام عليك سيدي ومولاي يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, for the hastening of the reappearance of Baqiyatullah al-A'zam Ruhi wa Arwah al-Alameen lahu al-Fida, enlighten your souls and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. She was beloved and close to her father, Sayyid al-Shuhada Aba Abdullah al-Hussain alayhi salam, an individual who witnessed the tragedy of Karbala and went through the trials of captivity and was paraded in the streets of Kufa and Sham. A person who has been the subject of character assassination and much misconception as far as her life is concerned. Sukayna bint Al-Hussain, peace be upon her, is one of the daughters of the grandson of the Holy Prophet, the third Holy Imam, Imam Al-Hussain, peace and blessings be upon him and his holy progeny. And indeed, she is an individual who today many of us perhaps have heard of when it comes to the story of the 10th of Muharram. Sukayna is an individual who lived the moments of the day of Ashura, who saw the calamities, who went through the grief and the suffering as far as losing not only her father and her family members, but also the noble companions, some of which were the companions of the Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, peace be upon him. You find when it comes to the personality of Sayyidah Sukayna, when her name is mentioned, different people from different communities will come up with a particular idea in their mind. In which way? When you hear Sukayna, some people immediately think that this is in reference to the 3-year-old or 4-year-old daughter of the Imam, who of course was martyred in Sham, in Damascus, after she saw the beloved head of the Imam, after she went through that grief and she could not bear the pain and the anguish. Yes? This is why, or this is the reason, because sometimes when it comes to the names of the daughters of the Imam alayhi salam, there is some kind of either disagreement or confusion. For certain communities, the 3 or 4-year-old daughter is known as Sukayna. Yes? For many others, she is known as Sukayna bint Al-Hussain, who of course is buried in Sham, in Damascus. Yes? Sukayna is documented as the name of this young daughter of the Imam, but some know her as Sukayna. Therefore, when the name Sukayna is mentioned, they immediately think it's in reference to whom? To the young daughter of the Imam. When you examine her biography, when you look at her life, what do you find? You find historians have struggled as far as giving detailed accounts of the women of Ahl al-Bayt. In which way? In the idea that the women of the Ahl al-Bayt were by and large protected by the Ahl al-Bayt, and that of course they observed both physical and social hijab, in that the historians, number one, would not necessarily be interested to find out the exact person whom, for example, has said something. Let's say, for example, this is a daughter of Imam, or they would guess who had mentioned such a statement or a sermon. Yes? Similarly, there are a number of investigations as far as the identity of certain members of the Ahl al-Bayt who are female. For example, scholars today are talking about whether Kulthum, Salamullahi alayha, was the same person as Sayyida Zainab. Some say she's the same person because they say Sayyida Zainab was known as Zainab al-Kubra, yes, who also had a title by Kulthum. So therefore they say Kulthum did not necessarily exist. She's the same as Zainab. Whereas the more likely opinion is no, Kulthum alayhi salam was a distinct personality. She existed, she had a role to play supporting Sayyida Zainab on the 10th of Muharram. She had a number of sermons, yes, and indeed she is a daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And this confusion that exists is exactly because of the idea that information relating to the daughters and the sisters and the women of the Ahl al-Bayt was not readily available. Today, there is a need for us to discuss the life of Sukayna bint Al-Hussain alayhi salam. Number one, because perhaps most of us don't know much about her life, yes? Despite the fact that we may have come across her name in the Maqatil, in the story of the 10th of Muharram. But at the same time, because of the rising issues associated with the depiction of women, especially Muslim women around the world today, in that if you were to Google Muslim women, what do you find? You'll find images of ladies wearing niqab, staring either at the corner or towards the camera. Yes. And there are these stereotypical depictions that are presented to somehow give the idea that Muslim women are oppressed, they are subjugated, that they are voiceless, that they have no say, yes, and they're being forced, yes. This idea is being presented by a number of politicians in this country. A particular politician, yes, went to the parliament and she wore the burqa, trying to ridicule the Muslim women. But of course, she herself was humiliated. In the United States, the president, what did he say? Well, during the election campaign, he came forward and suggested that one particular Muslim lady who had lost her son as an American soldier, yes, that she was unable to speak, yes, because her husband would not allow her to speak in that particular forum, yes. The idea emerges in that today we are given statistics that Muslim women around the world are being targeted and are individuals who are sadly taking the brunt of most of the Islamophobic attacks. In many countries, including in this country, you may have come across in May in Sydney, We are told 4 Muslim ladies were wearing hijab, were attacked by one lady, yes, who unfortunately attacked them and physically abused them. In court, this lady said, there's no problem in me attacking Muslims. Why are you telling me that I did wrong, yes? When the judge indeed sentenced her, she said that I can attack Muslims. Similarly, in Perth, what do we find? Earlier this year, a lady, a muhajjaba, a hijabi sister, was attacked by an individual with a beer bottle, yes? And their hijab was snatched off. And we are hearing more and more of these sad incidents and cases, whereby ABC here in Australia reported that as far as attacks on Muslims are concerned, over 70% is targeted towards hijab wearing females. In the United States, many incidents have been recently recorded. A lady who was wearing hijab works for Delta Airlines. One day sitting in the office in one of the airports, a man enters the office, yes, kicks the chair, kicks her under her legs. She tries to run away from the office. He runs after her. When he couldn't catch her, he goes down mocking the prayers and saying to her, Trump is here to get you, yes? As well as one hijabi sister, 17-year-old, in the month of Ramadan, she was killed, yes, in Virginia in the United States. In the United Kingdom, there have been hijabi sisters who have been mocked at, spat at, hijab taken away from them. Today we find a struggle out there as far as the role of Muslims are concerned. And there's no doubt that as far as our response to these attacks and Islamophobia, we do not look at prejudice with prejudice, yes? We need to be able to deal with these cases and look at what is happening as a challenge, both for the brothers as well as the sisters. Because I tell you, sometimes these challenges are self-inflicted and sometimes we have an opportunity to correct them. Not sure if this is true, but they say once there was a Muslim lady who went with her brother on a flight. And indeed, there are some sisters who have complained, as hijabi sisters, they've gone on flights, they're being targeted, yes? They've been taken out of the flights for investigation and harassment and interrogation. So it is said that this lady, yes, went with her brother on a long-haul flight. But they could not sit together, they were separated. Her brother would be sitting next to the window and she was sitting on the other side. And there were quite a few people between them, yes? Her brother said, I'm going to go to sleep. When it comes to Fajr time, wake me up because, you know, you are very good with timing. Unfortunately, her brother's name is Jihad. That's the first point in which sometimes people struggle with, yes? So what did she do? It was time for Fajr. She looked, she couldn't wake him up. She calls out, Jihad, it's time. Sometimes you feel sorry, yes? The idea, therefore, is that we can't always blame others. Sometimes we have to look at ourselves. But there is a need for us to examine role models in history, especially who are females, to stand as exemplars, both for males, but importantly also for females. Positive news and indeed encouragement that is required, because there is so much we can do when action, what speaks louder than words. One of the scholars says in America, he says, I was in a convention, a person came to me and said, I would like to become a Muslim. I said, have you researched? Have you investigated Islam? He said, yes, I've come to a conclusion after much research. He said, can I ask you, what led you to Islam? He said, let me tell you my story. One day I was at home, I get a knock on the door. I find a young boy who's struggling to speak English. He has a dish, you know, with some food on it. He comes and tells me, this is a gift. We are your neighbors. We want you to have this. We want you to have this food. He said, I was offended. Why would this person give me food? We have enough food in my house. He said, I took it and I placed it in the trash, in the bin. The next day, this young boy came with his father, who couldn't speak English. Now he was telling me that it's the month of Ramadan. And it is their desire for me to share their food too, yes? It is an act of kindness and generosity. He said, I felt so embarrassed when I recognized what they were doing. they said that our Prophet has taught us to care about our neighbors. He said, I was so touched, I welcomed them home, yes? After a while, we became friends, and I began to investigate what kind of religion teaches such kindness and generosity. Until I came to the conclusion, it was what? The religion of Islam. Therefore, acts like this go a long way into what? Positively presenting the message of the religion. Let's look at the life of Sukayna bint Al-Hussain alayhi salam by examining a number of areas and answers to a number of questions. Number one, from the family of the Imam alayhi salam, the females who were there on the 10th of Muharram, who is present in Karbala. Number two, when it comes to Sayyida Sukayna, what is her life? And what kind of statements from the Imam alayhi salam position her and indeed describe her status? And number three, what are the misconceptions about her? Where do we find these misconceptions and how do we respond? And how can the example of Sukayna bint Al-Hussain salamullahi alayha be presented today as a means to encourage the empowerment of our sisters, the empowerment of our ladies when it comes to modern day society? When it comes to the ladies who were there on the 10th of Muharram, we find that that is a distinct quality in the movement and the revolution of Imam alayhi salam. In that, historians such as Charles Dickens, what does he say? He says, you know, some people say Hussein made this movement for worldly desires. But what I can't seem to understand is, why did he take his women, his wives, his sisters, his daughters? It stands for reason, this famous British author says, it stands for reason that Hussein's movement was for the establishment of the religion of Islam. That the movement and the presence of these ladies with the Imam alayhi salam had a number of important pivotal roles. When it comes to who was with him, this is the question people often ask. Many times we hear individuals such as Sayyida Zainab, of course, salamullahi alayha. We hear names such as Kulthum. But who else was there with the Imam and who accompanied him from his Ahl al-Bayt? First group are his sisters. And according to narrations, he had 9 of his sisters with him on the 10th of Muharram. Please pay attention to this, because no doubt for some of us it may be the first time we hear this. Yes? Who amongst his sisters were there? In addition to Sayyida Zainab, in addition to Kulthum radwanullahi ta'ala alayhim, there was Fatima bint Ali, peace and blessings be upon them. Who is Fatima? Fatima was one of the sisters of the Imam who, in the courtyard of Yazid, there was a man who looked at her and said, I want to take her as my slave. Yazid said, very well. She went and grabbed Sayyida Zainab and said, sister, please help me. Sayyida Zainab looked at Yazid and said, by God, you will never do this. You can never do this. Yazid was angry. He said, how dare you? I do whatever I wish to do. She said, you can if you leave the religion of Islam. That moment Yazid said, well, your father and your brother already left this religion. She said, no, you and your father and your brother came to this religion because of my grandfather, my father and my brother. All of a sudden, he could not say anything. And Fatima was saved. Yes, this is one of the sisters of the Imam who is there. Similarly, we find Khadija bint Ali, Ruqayya bint Ali. Khadija had a shaheed on the 10th of Muharram. She had one of her sons who was martyred with Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Ruqayya, the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Hani, yes, al-Hasan, Ramla, and Zainab as-Sughra. In addition to one other person who there is a dispute about her exact name. Therefore, you find these were the sisters of the Imam who were there according to narrations. We cannot be absolutely sure, but this is extrapolated from different maqatil. When it comes to his wives, there is a discussion as to the presence of one of his wives by the name of Layla bint Abi Murra ibn Mas'ud al-Thaqafi, ibn Urwa ibn Mas'ud al-Thaqafi, yes? Layla, of course, is the mother of Ali al-Akbar. And indeed, the discussion among scholars was that was she present on the 10th in Karbala or not? Layla was an individual who indeed would remember the 10th of Muharram. And she would say that when she came back, she had many proposals for marriage. She would refuse all proposals. When she came back to Medina, she said, I will not sleep in a house which has a roof, because I want to feel the pain and the heat that my husband Hussein went through when his body was on the plains of Karbala for 3 days without burial. Such was her loyalty, yes? An honorable lady, Layla, peace be upon her. Who else was there as far as, or possibly was there, as far as the wives of Imam alayhi salam is concerned? A lady by the name of Ishaq bint Talha. She had 2 children with Imam al-Hussein, Abdullah and Fatima, yes? And it is said that she was the wife of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. Imam al-Hassan said, when I die, he asked Imam al-Hussein to marry her. And Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam married her after Imam al-Hassan had left this world. And the 3rd wife of the Imam, who according to traditions and historical records was there on the 10th of Muharram, was Ar-Rabab. Yes? Ar-Rabab is the mother of Abdullah al-Radhi', Ali al-Asghar, known in some communities, as well as Sukayna bint Al-Hussain. Yes? Indeed, when it comes to the daughters of the Imam, we are told several of his daughters were there. Who were they? Fatima al-Kubra, Fatima al-Sughra, 2 Fatimas. The name Fatima was beloved towards the Ahl al-Bayt. You know, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi salam had 4 daughters, and all 4, according to historical records, were called Fatima. One of them Fatima al-Kubra, one of them Fatima al-Sughra, the other is Fatima al-Wusta, Fatima the middle one. Do you know what the 4th Fatima is? Fatima al-Ukhra, the other Fatima. That was the love that they had for the name Fatima, that they would give it to their daughters. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam also had a number of daughters by the name of Fatima. Fatima al-Kubra, Fatima al-Sughra. There is Fatima who is known as Fatima al-Alila, the one who was ill. He left in Medina. There was, of course, the young daughter Ruqayya bint Al-Hussain, 3 or 4 years old on the 10th, also known as Sakina, as well as whom? Atika bint Al-Hussain and Sukayna bint Al-Hussain, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. These were the women of the Ahl al-Bayt who were there on the 10th of Muharram. Which year was Sukayna born? There is a discussion in historical records. Some say she was born in the year 42 after Hijrah, some say 47, some say 48. It is likely that she was 13 or 14 years of age on the day of Ashura. From a young age, Sukayna was known for her generosity and the love of serving others. One incident is recorded, and that is when her brother Imam Zayn al-Abidin left Medina to go to Hajj for the pilgrimage. She gave him 1,000 dirham. She said, please distribute this towards the poor and the needy. This is documented as one of the acts of kindness of Sukayna, peace and blessings be upon her. Ulama from the school of Khilafah, that's what they are known, our brothers, the school of Khilafah, because we, as the Shia of Ali Muhammad, call ourselves the school of the Sunnah of the Prophet. Yes, we follow the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet. There is the school of Ahl al-Bayt and there is the school of Khilafah. Yes, the school of Khilafah, our brothers, they come forward, they praise Sukayna. Yes, for example, the author of Bidayah and Nihaya, Ibn Kuthayr, he says, كانت خير نساء أمتها. She was amongst the greatest of the women of her time. This is who? Sukayna, the daughter of the Imam alayhi salam. Similarly, we are told that she was a narrator of hadith, somebody who informed people about the traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. One beautiful narration from Sukayna salamullahi alayha deserves a minute of reflection. Yes? What is that narration? She says that the Prophet of Islam said, حُمَلَاءُ الْقُرْآنِ عُرَفَاءُ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ. Beautiful. It said those who carry the Quran are the ones who have attained the degree of cognizance of God in paradise. One of the highest degrees and statuses on the day of judgment. Meaning those who have not just carried the Quran physically, as the Quran itself talks about them. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا. Yes? Not just carrying the Quran by just reading the Quran, yes? Or using the Quran as a means of barakah, but rather ensuring that the Quran penetrates their hearts. I say often to the brothers and sisters, most of us, when we leave in the morning, we need some breakfast to nourish our bodies, yes? It is deemed today by many scientists to be the most important meal of the day, some say. I say that if we need breakfast to nourish our bodies physically, let us begin the day with few verses of the Quran to nourish our souls. How beautiful it is that we commence our daily schedule with the recitation of the beautiful words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the month of Muharram should also be the month of the Quran, yes? Because Abu Abdullah Al-Hussain gave his life and the life of his family and companions so that the Quran reaches us today. There was a plan to destroy the religion and to fabricate and to ensure that the teachings do not reach people, yes, no doubt. Therefore, our association with the Quran should not be superficial, yes? It should be that which Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, if everyone on this world was to go and to disappear, I would not feel lonely because I have the Quran. Yes. An individual who has grasped the power of the beautiful, mesmerizing words of the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyida Sukayna would not only narrate this, but she would have a special relationship with the Holy Quran. Such were the Ahl al-Bayt, because on the night of Ashura, one campsite could be heard as one's reciting the Quran and performing the Salah, and the other campsite was playing music and dancing. Such was the comparison. Today, as we remember these honorable individuals, we have to choose which campsite we're on. If we people who take sinning lightly, God forbid, by listening to haram music, then it is difficult for us to side with the campsite of Abu Abdullah if the campsite of Umar ibn Sa'ad and Yazid and Ubaidullah were the ones who are listening to music. It's a reminder, of course, to all of us, yes? But when it comes to Sukayna, there is a very important line from her father which highlights her importance. Al-Hasan al-Muthanna, who is the son of Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, came one day to propose. He said to his uncle, Imam al-Hussain, I want to marry one of your daughters. Imam al-Hussain says to him, I will give you my daughter Fatima because she resembles my mother Fatima, peace be upon her, the most. As far as Sukayna is concerned, she is an individual who has been overwhelmed with the worship and the remembrance of Allah. Yes. She was an individual who was so focused upon acts of devotion to God that the Imam says that she is not an individual who seeks to get married. Yes, now, why this al-istighraq billah, as the Imam alayhi salam describes her. Similarly, Imam alayhi salam, in lines of poetry, he says that Sukayna is amongst the greatest of women, khayrun nisa'i. Yes, all this praise of the Imam alayhi salam, especially from a ma'soom, is not something to be taken lightly. Imam alayhi salam would not say this about a daughter of his just because she is his own daughter. He will only say this if she has the qualities, the virtuous characteristics as a lady, as a female, in order to excel in life. Yes? And the Ahl al-Bayt would continuously highlight how females can achieve greatness. Yes? It is not more difficult, because I tell you, once a sister sent me a message on Facebook. She said, why has Allah made it more difficult for females to attain high spirituality and get closer to Him? It's so much harder for us. Yes. Why is it the case? Another sister sent another message. She said what? She said, I want to get close to Allah by reading the Quran, but someone in my mosque tells me I can't read Surah Yusuf because I'll get ideas in my mind. Such kind of misconceptions exist, yes? There is no such thing whatsoever. When it comes to proximity to Allah, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says what? Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. He has created you of males and females. There is no advantage given to any of the genders, yes? Anyone who says so is deluded or what? Or has been misguided to say so, yes? Each and every creation of God is special in their own way. And out of the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all have equal opportunities. Or if they're in difficult situations, they'll be judged differently by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet when it comes to this honorable lady, yes, she saw all the masa'ib, yes. She witnessed what she witnessed on the 10th of Muharram. We'll come back to that at the end. But we are told that after she was taken as captive, after she was attacked, yes, after her hijab was ripped off her, she was taken and paraded. She had a number of important, courageous stances in the journey towards Kufa and from Kufa to Sham. In which way? We are told that, for example, she spoke out in the courtyard of Yazid. When she saw Yazid, la'anahullah, poking the head of Imam Al-Hussain and the blessed lips of the grandson of the Holy Prophet, she cried out, by Allah, I have not seen a wretched individual as hard-hearted, as a mushrik and a kafir like Yazid. Today there is an individual who is listened to by hundreds of thousands of Muslim brothers and sisters in India and other places here in Australia and Canada and America and the United Kingdom. He's apparently a well-known speaker, yes? Claims to know about Islam. His name doesn't deserve to be mentioned on the minbar of Hussein, yes? And he's adamant about his position. When he mentions the name of Yazid, he says radiyallah afterwards. Today we are in this position, yes? Even in Saudi, examples like this exist. No doubt, yes? Indeed, the fabrications have reached to the level whereby there is distortion of the truth and the inability to decipher between what is haqq and indeed what is batil. Yet the beautiful personality of Sukayna, her devotion to God, her dedication, her remembrance to Allah, yes, her strength, her valor, the fact that she remained patient, she supported Sayyida Zainab in the looking after of the children, yes, in the protection of the children, despite her own self being only 13 or 12 years of age, yes. Yet people like her have been the subject of attack and misconception and character assassination by the enemies of Ahl al-Bayt, sadly, yes. Unfortunately, today we find books written, websites out there that talk about this honorable lady in a very derogatory manner. In which way? Today you have books such as Al-Aghani by this individual who is known as the Asfahani, Abu al-Faraj al-Asfahani. You have Al-Madaini and others have written. These are historians, non-Shia historians. What have they said? They've come forward and said Sukayna married 6 men in her life. One of them was Mus'ab ibn Zubayr, who was one of the arch enemies of the Ahl al-Bayt, yes. Mus'ab ibn Zubayr, who was the brother of Abdullah ibn Zubayr, who was both of them sons of Az-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, who fought Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Battle of Jamal. She married him. Then they said she married Zayd ibn Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf, again not very keen with the Ahl al-Bayt. That was one accusation. Another accusation they say Sukayna did, she loved to what? Host gatherings of lahu and singing, God forbid. They narrate that she would invite poets who loved to mention poetry regarding romantic gestures, al-ghazal, yes? She would listen to them, she would correct them, she would have these gatherings, yes? They would accuse her of such acts. And indeed, these are all rejected for a number of reasons. They have no basis whatsoever, yes? It is the attempt of Al-Zubayr, Al-Marwan, yes, and Bani Umayyah to tarnish the reputation of the Ahl al-Bayt. And they paid thousands of dirhams and dinars to people to fabricate. Amongst the fabrication was this regarding the personality of Sukayna. Why do we reject this completely, categorically? Why would we never accept this? And the reason is, number one, Imam Al-Hussain praises her as an honorable lady, yes, as a lady devoted to God, no doubt, yes, the best of women, number one. Number two, the Ahl al-Bayt, when they returned to Medina, they spent their time in Azar and awakening the conscience of the people. Yes. It is impossible for what? It is impossible for her to be doing such acts whilst what? Whilst the Ahl al-Bayt for many years, they would be mourning what happened on the 10th of Muharram. She would be with Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. That would never be allowed. Yes, it is inconceivable to think. And similarly, you know how the women of Ahl al-Bayt were? An individual whose name is Uthman al-Mazani, he said, I was with Ali ibn Abi Talib for 5 years, including his years in Kufa. He said, Wallah, I never saw or heard Zainab, his daughter. Such were the Ahl al-Bayt, yes. They would not expose their women in any shape or form. There's no doubt. Such were their position. And these were fabrications designed to make people what? Distance themselves from the Ahl al-Bayt. And they're categorically rejected. And under no circumstances can we accept them. And that's why we need to speak to our brothers and sisters and say to them, don't just accept anything that is written out there about the Holy Prophet, about the Ahl al-Bayt. The fact that it is in any books of narration or history doesn't necessarily mean anything. The same applies to us, yes? There is a barometer. There is the idea of the protection and the sanctity of these holy individuals whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen, and the extended family too, whose life is full of wisdom, dedication, valor, yes, patience and taqwa. Now, when it comes to the personality of Sukayna, how can we look at her as a role model as far as the empowerment of our sisters is concerned? No doubt today we are facing a number of challenges as far as the position of women in the religion of Islam. And indeed the depiction of women out there. There are the discussion regarding the hijab. There was the whole discussion regarding the burkini. There was earlier, a few years ago, the debate regarding the niqab and so on and so forth. Today, there is a need for us as both men and women to examine, seeking lessons from the tragedy of Karbala and the wonderful University of Ashura on how we can utilize what is happening out there in order to present a beautiful outlook and a wonderful image as far as how the religion of Islam views women. Yes, because sadly, the attack sometimes is from within. There are Muslim ladies, so-called Muslim ladies, who are coming out today and are questioning the hijab. You see, there is no evidence for the hijab in the Quran. There are others who are coming out and making other statements. Yes, there are people who will go and place themselves on the front cover of a misogynistic magazine full of illicit, or used to be full of illicit images, yes, in the name of what? Trying to present a good image of the religion of Islam and saying, well, don't judge me and I'm not here, etc., etc. That the religion is being played in the hands of certain individuals, yes, who seem to think that they have the authority to speak on its behalf. Yes. Question today is, how do we ensure that we work towards the empowerment of our sisters, giving them what they deserve, and importantly, tackling some issues that exist in our communities? The first point that I would like to address, seeking inspiration from the women of Karbala, is with regards to tackling misconceptions about women in Islam. What do we mean here? When it comes to the idea of females in the religion, there are people who talk about how women are not given their rights. So, there are subjects such as inheritance. There are subjects such as polygamy. There are areas such as divorce, domestic violence, and others in which you find plentiful misconceptions and fabrications and distortions on the internet. And people, the image that they get, in the United Kingdom, there was a poll a few years ago asking 2,000 people about their opinions when it comes to the religion of Islam. One question was, how do you think the religion of Islam looks at women? 64% responded, Islam oppresses women. How did they get this idea from? Yes, because we are not doing enough to tackle the misconceptions out there, by presenting it in a way that people understand. And these misconceptions must be tackled not only through books and websites, but through utilizing technology and the way that people are today benefiting from, for example, these short clips and these vlogs, so to speak, or the presentation of, for example, certain images that goes viral, yes? The idea is what? The idea is, it is a responsibility for both brothers and sisters, but importantly, sisters, number one, to ensure that they understand and are equipped with the tools to challenge these misconceptions out there, and to be able to give intellectual answers, to be able to be convincing, yes? They need to be convinced themselves, by the way. Some of our sisters are themselves not very convinced about this issue. Say, maybe, I don't have as much rights. And they get influenced by all these voices, the feminist movements out there, and so on and so forth, who are trying to somehow demoralize them as Muslim sisters, adorning the Islamic dress code of modesty and chastity, wearing it for the sake of Allah, being the ambassadors of the religion of Islam, yes? Therefore, there is a need for us to enhance our presentation with regards to dealing with misconceptions, number one. Number two, we need to encourage the education of our sisters. In which way? For them to continue as far as attending universities and colleges, as far as going to the Hawza is concerned, yes, Islamic education is concerned, attaining those degrees necessary, yes, because knowledge is power, no doubt, yes. And the Prophet of Islam comes forward, Al-Rasul al-A'zam wa Nabi al-Akram Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Indeed, comes forward and says what? He says that طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُؤْمِنٍ وَمُؤْمِنَةٍ. If we do not gain knowledge, how are we expected to answer questions like, why weren't there any prophets who were female? People ask this question today. They say, why weren't there out of 124,000 prophets, all of them were male? Yes? What is the wisdom behind that? Yes? It is not because the female lacks the knowledge, yes, or the ability to be a prophet. It's a technical issue. It's a physiological issue. If females were not prophets, definitely females made prophets. Yes? Like whom? Look at Isa. Look at Musa, alayhi salam. Look at Ibrahim, alayhi salam. Yes? You look at their lives and their inspiration was what? The females. You look at our holy beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, his holy progeny, and the role of Khadija, salamullahi alayha. Look at Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima al-Zahra, peace be upon them. Look at the 10th of Muharram and the likes of Zainab and Sukayna bint Al-Hussain. Yes? Therefore, knowledge is of the greatest importance. And to encourage our sisters to what? To continuously be in that state of learning. Why? Because many a times the education of our children is in the hands of the mothers, no doubt, yes. And that's why they need to be equipped with the tools to be able to answer modern day challenges, especially when our youngsters are presented with these questions. Recently, I sat with a boy, a Shia brother in UK, who has decided that he no longer accepts God, ma'adallah. He says, I don't believe God exists. I said, why? He said, when I was young, I used to go to the mosque. And I used to listen to the majalis, but I used to have problems with them. I disagreed with what was being said. I went back home, I spoke to my mother. I said to her, why did this Sheikh or this Sayyid say this? My mother would look at me and says, how dare you, have no right to ask this question. Whatever he says is true. Just listen to it and follow it. He says, the more questions I had, the more doubt I began to build up, until I came to the conclusion, hold on, no one's answering my questions here, yes? And it led me towards this state. An honest opinion by an individual, yes? We must rise to the occasion as far as education is concerned. That's what? That's number three. Number four, we need to, or number three rather, we need to encourage our sisters to go into the fields such as politics, such as media. Encourage our sisters to be speakers. You may find it surprising. Why not? Let's empower them with this ability, yes? Let's encourage our sisters to follow in the footsteps of Sayyida Fatima and Sayyida Zainab, alayhi salam, yes? For example, they need to be members of mosque committees, not just members representing women issues or talking about only the women's section, but vital members of mosque committees which have what? Which have opinions which are listened to. Yes? In many mosques out there, our centers, this unfortunately has yet to evolve, but we need to what? Encourage it. That's why we find today in the Western world, there are females who have risen to prominence, who are Muslim females, yes? There is a lady by the name of Shirlene Elder. Some of you may have heard about her. For 10 years, she has been in America. She's what? In the United States Federal Court. She's a judge and she wears hijab. She said sometimes, when I began, I was wondering, should I take my hijab off or not? She says, now the hijab is a source of pride for me because I'm respected by the people because of it. They say you are a principled individual. You are a disciplined person. Yes, that you have adhered to your values without necessarily succumbing to pressure out there. Yes, of great importance is to encourage. And this is the role of the brothers, the husbands, the fathers. Yes. Don't just say the role, just yes, you don't need to be educated, you don't need to be out there in the fields of politics and media, because I tell you, we need our sisters to speak out loud when it comes to these issues. It's all well and good for us to come out and say, well, Islam liberates females. Islam gives rights to the females, yes, as much as it does to the males. It's not about equality, it's about equity, and there is a difference. Yes? We need our sisters to be able to speak out in such a manner. Yes? That's number 3. Number 4 of great importance, which is a bit delicate and sensitive. Please pay attention to this point. Today we have a struggle as far as some cultural aspects which impact and has a negative notion with regards to the role of women. Sadly, we need to be able to speak out and challenge those cultural elements. There is no harm in adopting certain cultural values, yes? They have a position in the religion, but in some cases, they contradict teachings of the Sharia. That's why we need to be brave enough to tackle them. Let me give you a number of examples. When it comes to marriages, the number of emails people like me receive from sisters who complain that their father would not accept the marriage. Why? She is from Baalbek and the brother is from Nabatiyya. She is from Najaf and the brother is from Baghdad, just to save myself there. Why is it that we have developed that tendency? And in some communities, she is a Sayyida, he is not a Sayyid. Please find me. And they are compatible, or they think they're compatible. A believing brother, he has what? He has the necessary qualities. They seem to get along. Yes, there are these issues which today are what? Are causing a problem. And some of the youth are struggling with it. It is making them disheartened about the religion of Islam. And they're blaming it on the religion. Whereas in many cases it's to do with what? It's to do with culture. For example, what is wrong? And I know I'll get in trouble with the parents for this. So brace yourselves. What is wrong with our sisters going to their father and saying, I found someone, I want to get married to him? Some of the parents, some others would say, Habibi, you can't do that. That's not appropriate. How can a lady come forward, yes, and request? I often mention this in the Iraqi community and in other communities. For example, when the nikah ceremony is being recited, the Sheikh or the Sayyid, when you call it iktib iktab, in certain parts, when the Sheikh is reciting or is asking for permission to be the representative of the sister in the conduction of her marriage with the brother, she's normally behind the door or not seen, and he speaks to her and says, would you be agreeing to me to be your wakil? In that culture, what do they say? They say the lady must not say yes first time. She must wait. So sometimes I ask, how many times do I need to repeat? 14. Why? 14 ma'sumin. Thank God it's not 124,000. The idea being is what? Yes, sometimes some of these issues are not a problem as such. Yes, no problem, we'll say it 14. But in some cases, it's an obstacle, yes, and creates conflict, creates problems when it comes to marriages concerned, right? So when it comes to these ideas, we need to begin to challenge them. Similarly, domestic violence. Sometimes in certain communities, it is deemed to be okay. Physical abuse, or sometimes even psychological abuse, which the religion of Islam totally condemns. Yes, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he would come forward and say what? He said, anyone who lifts his hand and hits his wife, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will command Malik, the angel of Jahannam, to lift his hands and strike him in Jahannam. This is one of the narrations amongst many which highlight the prohibition of such acts today that we find. I was surprised. I saw a clip in one of the North African countries where the Muslim women there, they said it's normal and it should happen, otherwise a marriage is not valid. They were talking about how husbands should beat up or should strike their wives because that is the norm. If it doesn't happen, then it's not a normal marriage. Subhanallah. What kind of mentality we have made some people reach in this particular regard. We must challenge them and be brave and say some of these aspects, yes, need to be addressed. But importantly, in the final point that we should look at amongst a group of others, and it is not necessarily a full list or a comprehensive element, but today to empower our sisters is not necessarily to follow in the footsteps of others who are non-Muslims, who are trying to feed us ideas about how women should be presented. Please pay attention to this. Because there is pressure out there for our sisters to conform to certain values which are not Islamic. In which way? We are told today the pressure is to show that men and women should be doing the same tasks. Should not necessarily be doing specific tasks because otherwise you're deemed to be sexist. Or otherwise you're deemed to be inappropriate. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran highlights and gives us this particular constitution. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَ. Allah says, for the men, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala has made them and created them in a particular way, and they have their roles and their obligations. And likewise for the women. Yes. The empowerment of our sisters and Muslim women is not by them pleasing men or other values. It's by them pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The empowerment comes from Allah. It is He who will make what? Who will make our sisters stand up in honor and dignity. Yes? With that sense of self-esteem and self-belief. Sadly, what do we find today? We find this incredible pressure to try and say, oh, but why is this like this? Oh, why the men this? Why do they have this right? Why do we not have this right? Why is that? And they start to question Sharia. There's no harm in asking to learn. But the problem is, when you see verses in the Quran that clearly talk about the fact when it comes to testimony, there are 2 ladies required when it comes to testimony in court. Yes? Sometimes people come forward. Yes, it's wise and no problem to ask and investigate why this is happening, but a problem if one starts to doubt it or reject it or speak against it, especially on social media and stuff and other places. And the idea being, and that is what? That is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to honor, yes, human beings. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. And that's why when it comes to this honorable lady, Sayyida Sukayna, yes, she lived until she was 70 or 80 years of age. She passed away in the city of Medina. Yes. There is a dispute as to whether she actually married in her life or not, but she would constantly recall what she endured. Yes. Today, when we honor her and when you remember her legacy, when we honor the women of Karbala, yes, we must indeed follow in their footsteps. Because the likes of Sukayna and Zainab, the likes of Kulthum and Rabah, yes, were individuals who protected the hijab. They protected the Islamic dress code. Yes. It was hurtful for them when the hijab was snatched off in those few moments after the attack on the night known as Laylatul Ghariba or Shama Ghariba. Yes. it was something which really hurts them, yes, because they would give anything and everything in order for this hijab to be observed and indeed looked after. Yes. And our attendance in the majalis of Zaynab and Sukayna, in the majalis of Aba Abdullah Al-Hussain, is what? Is honoring their legacy and saying this hijab we will look after, not only as females, but also as males. We will be the support when the going gets tough. When somebody abuses, when somebody mocks this hijab, we will wear it in defiance to say it is my identity and I am proud of it, yes. That is why Sayyida Sukayna would indeed recall her tragedy and her masa'ib and what she witnessed. Can you imagine a 13-year-old girl would have to go through so much grief and pain and see what she saw? Her role in Karbala was such that documents and historical records point to Imam Al-Hussain alayhi salam referring to her in some occasions, speaking to her in some occasions, which suggests she was out there. She was in the thick of things. She was trying to be supportive as a young daughter of her father, yes. Yet a human being is a human being, and the pain was overwhelming and difficult. One of the things that she had to witness was when her father heard the cries of Ali al-Akbar. He went towards the battlefield. According to some narrations, he did not go towards the direction of where Ali was crying.